honourable friend accept that a single European currency is not a soft but a harsh option, and the introduction of such a single currency without first achieving a single European market and then a single European economy would be an extremely harsh option, and that it would benefit neither the consumer nor the producer fairly, but merely the bureaucrat, and therefore lead us down the trail towards not only a federal Europe, but an undemocratic, bureaucratic federal Europe.
I agree wholly with what my honourable friend has said. When the discussions about the currency and the economic and monetary union get into the finance ministers, they are very much more practical than some of the heads of government are about these matters. And I believe, and I'm sure colleagues will have heard my right honourable friend the Chancellor say many, many times that there are many of his colleagues who are very worried about any suggestion of a single currency before we have really almost a common economy, or an economy with about similar prosperity. It just wouldn't work. And once you go to a single currency, then all the differences would come out in heavy unemployment and in massive movements of people. Very heavy unemployment. Well, of course, very heavy unemployment. Well, of course, socialist countries like France have much heavier unemployment than we have already. We come out in even heavier unemployment and massive movement of people from where they had previously been living to where the work was.
Ron Brown!
Since today the Prime Minister is a great advocate for democracy, will she allow servicemen and servicewomen the democratic right to join a trade union? If she does agree with that right, will she not find out, given the vote, that servicewomen and servicewomen in the Gulf would vote against a war in that area because they do believe in negotiation rather than confrontation?
No, Mr. Speaker, our present arrangements have served this country supremely well.
Mr. Hicks.
Mr. Speaker, would my right honourable friend agree that during the course of the past 20 years or so, many people, particularly young people, have been persuaded to support the Conservative Party because of our commitment to Europe, unlike many on the opposition benches? And in that context, would she not agree that there is increasing sadness amongst those people about the apparent inability of this country to respond in a positive manner to any proposals involving political and financial convergence and environmental issues?
We reached agreement yesterday.
Well, with regard to environmental issues, I think that my honourable friend will see that we reached agreement yesterday, will find that of our rivers, 95% of our rivers are good and fair, which is better than any other record in Europe, that we have a programme for looking after our beaches and, in fact, also for improving the quality of water of some 28 billion. We are the only country which has such a programme, and you will find many, many places in Europe that have nothing like the quality of water that we have. We also find that the question is not whether we are Europeans, and keen Europeans we are. It is what sort of Europe we want. Whether we want a democratically responsible Europe, whether we want a Europe of nation-states which freely cooperate together. That is every bit as honourable and as worthy an objective as trying to make it less democratic and trying to dissolve one's natural loyalties to one's country.
Mr. Winnick.
Is it not the case, Mr. Speaker, that on Europe, the Prime Minister is in the minority in the Cabinet and is indeed the leader not so much of the Tory party on these issues, but one of the many factions? But as regards the Gulf, would the Prime Minister not agree that all those who talk about attempts to resolve the conflict, the difficulties arising from the invasion of Kuwait by negotiations, surely what has been demonstrated over the last weekend is that all the efforts of the Soviet representative to Iraq in his mission to try and persuade the dictator to give concessions have totally failed. There's not the slightest illustration at all that Saddam Hussein intends to withdraw from Kuwait. Why should one of the most notorious of all dictators, who's committed a criminal act in the invasion of Kuwait, who has committed untold crimes and atrocities since August 2nd in Kuwait, why should he be allowed to get away with it?
Precisely. But perhaps he'd better address that question to the honourable member sitting behind him.
Order. Order. We have a very heavy day ahead of us, and I'm allowed 3 more questions from each side, and I regret we must move on. Sir Ian Lloyd.
Mr. Speaker, the many members of this House, and I suspect many people outside it in Europe, will have the most profound respect for the disciplined and informed pragmatism which the Prime Minister brings to the discussion of these matters. But would she not agree that there is a very great danger that the vision of a united Europe bequeathed to us by the great founders, including Winston Churchill, who I think I'm right in saying was a federalist, could be at least blurred and at best damaged if, in contemplating the very complex, difficult procedures of integrating Europe, we dare not consider at any stage any change, however small and however slowly achieved, in the balance of powers between this House and the European Parliament.
That is not quite correct, but we went in, Mr. Speaker, we went in on the basis clearly set out that we were, in fact, not in any way going to lose our national identity, and nor, if the honourable member looks back over the debates, would any strong national interest be overridden. If he looks, that was the fundamental basis on which we got a majority of 8 for the second reading of the bill, which took us into the House. Now, I believe that that was a very honourable way to go about it, and I believe it is a very honourable objective to keep our national identity and have cooperation. Now, when it came to things like wanting a single market, we had, in fact, if we were to get some of the directives through, to have a little bit more majority voting. That majority voting under that single European Act, that particular batch of majority voting, should cease when we've got the single European Act. Apart from that, it is better if we go forward by agreement between us all, because we have to get agreement anyway for changing the treaty. Of course, but we have recently, as my honourable friend knows, completed the European monetary system by joining the exchange rate mechanism. That is for us an extra discipline for keeping down inflation, and it is also very welcome in Europe.
Ms. Alice Mann.
During her discussions on the Gulf, when presumably the Prime Minister was pressing for the Baghdad leadership to pay compensation for war crimes and the destruction of Kuwait, did the Prime Minister put forward any proposals to recompense the victims of the other illegal occupation in the Middle East, that of the West Bank and Gaza? And in her concern for the, and I paraphrase the Prime Minister, the unity of the international community on United Nations decisions, did she press the case of the Palestinians who are having their land stolen and have for decades, having their homes demolished, having their citizens killed? And why is Kuwaiti blood more precious than Palestinian blood? Is it because it's tinged with oil?
The Honourable Lady will be aware that both situations are extremely serious, that both are very different. Kuwait had never threatened to attack or attacked anyone. She wanted only to live in peace. Unfortunately, Jordan attacked Israel. I think she was begged not to, but she did, and that finished up by Jordan losing part of Jerusalem and losing the West Bank. They are not annexed. The West Bank is not annexed to Israel. It has been the subject of many United Nations resolutions, some of which the Arab world never accepted for a very long time. More recently, in the last 2 years, it has been accepted by the Palestinians and by Mr. Arafat. But we have been working together, and so has the community, from the Venice Declaration, for years to try to get a solution to that problem. It is not easy. It is easier to speak about it than to get a solution on the basis of 242, and we continue to do so. And if the Honourable Lady looks at the communique, she'll see that we discussed it and are taking forward our previous policies, and that when this matter is over and when Kuwait has been restored to the people of Kuwait, we will continue to go ahead on the basis of our previous policy, which is negotiation, and we have previously said that we would be in favour of an international conference, so those previous policies would be taken forward.
William Cash.
All right, honourable friend.